Hello guys, welcome to Force of Nature Personal Training. Today I want to do a little video about how to plan a diet with all the numbers and the macros and all the other sort of things. The reason I want to do this is because whatever your fitness goal is, whether it is the obvious things, a weight related goal, losing body fat or building muscle, which is all much more about what you eat, or a performance based goal, it's important that you have a good understanding of what you are eating, how much or how little, so that if you need to make changes to it, that can be simple. If you don't know how much you're eating, you cannot increase that amount with any kind of accuracy, and it means you don't really know if the amount of food you're eating is increasing or decreasing as your training gets harder, as you get stronger. You need some control of the numbers. A lot of people find this stuff really intimidating. A lot of people don't like the numbers, and what I'm really hoping to show with this little video is that it really isn't that complicated. While there are some difficult bits to it, you don't need to know why any of it works. You've just got to do it, pretty much. As I've said before, you don't have to understand alternating current and amplitudes and voltages to turn on a light switch. You click the button, it works. Same with this stuff. You just have to plug the numbers in, it will work. Don't overthink it. So a good place to get started is with a nice blank piece of paper, or in this case, a blank Excel spreadsheet. First things you want to get down are your age, your weight, and your height. Couldn't be simpler. I like to use pounds as it is easier to do a lot of the maths on these things, and a lot of the numbers seem to be worked out by Americans again, so pounds is easier. And as it is a smaller unit of measurement, it is easier to see change over time. Our John Doe is 180 centimetres tall, 180 pounds of body weight, and 30 years old. The equation to work out his BMR, which means basal metabolic rate, is really complicated. There's lots of different bits of algebra in there, you're timesing things by different things, but as I said, you don't have to understand why that's the equation, you just use it and it will drop a number. That number is the minimum amount of food your body needs just to function throughout a day with no movement and no exercise. That is just your organs, your brain, and your body's minimum requirements. There are different equations to work this out. What one you choose to use is entirely up to yourself. I've forgotten the name of this one, in fact, but if you Google BMR calculator, you will find something. Now, the actual number itself is just a starting point. It can be changed as you see how your body responds to the diet, so don't worry about getting the number wrong in any way. As long as it is a ballpark figure, you will be fine. So next you've got to work out how many calories you actually need just to maintain your current weight, including activity. So to do this, all you're going to do is multiply your BMR by a number between 1 and 2. 1 would be a completely sedentary person that doesn't move around. 2 would be an incredibly active person who is constantly moving around, particularly performing physical activities. Everyone's going to fall somewhere on that scale. If you've got a desk job, somewhere down in the 1.2, 1.3. If you've got a very physical job, up in the 1.7, 1.8. Timesing that number by 2 should be reserved for really high-level athletes and active military. The next thing is to think about what goal you're actually trying to achieve. John Doe here is not trying to lose any weight, and therefore we have not put a calorie deficit or surplus, because he's not trying to gain or lose any weight. We've set his carbohydrate, protein and fat ratios at 30 fat, 30 protein and 40% carbohydrate, and again, just like the BMR calculation, they're just numbers that are very good as a baseline. Again, don't worry about too much about it, just see how it goes with those numbers. Just like with the BMR calculator, the internet is full of macro calculators. Feel free to use one of these if you don't want to do it yourself, but all you are doing is timesing the number of calories that you arrive at after timesing your BMR by your activity level by the percentage. And as long as those three numbers, 30, 30, 40 or 25, 25, 50 or whatever you choose, as long as those three numbers equal 100, you will end up with all of your calories split up into your relevant macros. and then you know how many calories are each thing you're eating. Simple as that. Doing this is going to give you your actual grammage of calories per day. Another thing you'll notice on this is I've put a minimum protein intake. That is very important for people losing weight, less important for people just trying to maintain. So we will actually fall a little bit below that minimum protein intake, but it's okay for this guy because he's not trying to actually lose any weight. One important thing to remember when you're working this out is that 4 calories equals either a gram of protein or carbohydrate, but it is 9 calories per gram of fat. The next thing is to work out how you're going to break those grams of food up over a week. The simplest thing to do would just be to have whatever your daily allowance of fat, protein and carbohydrate was every day. I always favour having a cheat day on diets where you can have whatever you like. I think it's just easier on your brain and makes the diet more likely to last a long time. Also, I feel that if you're going to have a day where you eat a lot more calories than usual, it's good to have a day where you eat less calories than usual. As you can see here, I've got NA on the Sunday because that's my cheat day, and I've got no fat and carbohydrates on the Monday. That's because other than the protein intake, I'll try and avoid having any additional foods on that day and just stick to salads and vegetables and light things just to have a day off. But because I've already got a way of adding a calorie deficit up at the top of my calculations, I don't want to create a bigger deficit by just removing a day's food. So we've broken that day up and increased the numbers on the other 5 days where you're eating normally. If you're working this stuff out yourself and that sounds too complicated, just don't. Very simply. There's no need to make things more complicated than you have to, but this is something that I quite like and I think it makes diets go easier. But if you're working this out yourself, just work out the same calorie intake 7 days a week. Now I know what I'm trying to give John Doe to eat every day. The next thing is actually pick some actual food. And again, don't overthink this. It can be edited later. You can change what you want. You don't need to guess the perfect diet. Pick a bunch of things that you are happy to eat. I have picked oatmeal and whey protein with some banana because I like that. I have picked eggs, pinto beans and barley because, again, I quite like that. And I've picked apples and peanut butter because I quite like that. They are okay things to eat. So having picked these foods, I have gone to good old Google and I have found nutritional data for these things. And I've worked out what I need to eat per 100 grams. I've worked out how much fat, carbohydrate and protein these foods contain per 100 grams. As you can see, there's loads of information available about any food you can imagine. Most of it, again, can seem really overwhelming. Fat, protein, carbohydrate. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry yourself overly much about how much of that carbohydrate is sugar. Don't worry much about how much of that carbohydrate is fiber. Don't worry about the sorts of fats. Just pick foods that you know are relatively healthy and just get those basic 3 numbers. Once you've done that and you've filled out the per 100 grams numbers for everything on your list of food, or in fact, I will point out that I have worked out the nutritional values for apples and eggs per individual apple and egg, not per 100 grams. Other than that, once you've worked out those numbers, you get them all down on a piece of paper, and then you can start working out how much of those things you eat. Basic example here, I've worked out 100 grams of oatmeal, 50 grams of whey, and 100 grams of banana. And that's given me some numbers and told me how many calories I'm eating so far. This is one reason I really like Excel for this, because I can just have it auto-sum columns and it makes life very easy. Saves you having to actually manually add things up with a calculator. I've repeated this with all of the other foods on the list until I had a complete day's food, and then I have had a look at my actual totals of fat, protein and carbohydrate. And as is very likely to happen when you work this stuff out roughly, the numbers are all over the place. There's too much fat, not enough protein, everything's wrong. And then I've just taken the numbers I've worked out and tweaked them around. This is why I'd always recommend doing this in on a computer rather than with a pen and paper, because it means I can just change those 100-gram numbers around as long as I want to until I arrive at roughly the right numbers. And as you'll see from this hit, roughly right. If you're within a few grams of each number, you're good. You do not need to get it exactly bang on. The next bit of course is shopping for the food and then preparing it. I will do a video at a later date about good ways of, logistics, good ways of getting the food in the right place at the right time, but I think that is enough for this video otherwise. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please get in touch either through my email address on my website or through the Ask a Question link on www.forceofnaturept.com. Anyway, that is everything. I really hope that was helpful. If you want to meet up and go over this stuff in person, then please get in touch. Or if you want to get involved in the training side, again, please get in touch with me through either www.forceofnaturept.com, or if you'd like to book a session to get started, it is the same link, www.forceofnaturept.com/book. Both work fine. Otherwise, thank you so much. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. And otherwise, I hope to see you in the gym soon. And goodbye. Thank you for watching.